Dr. Paul Mason, reduce omega-6 while increasing omega-3 to get full health benefits. This is from Dr. Paul Mason's own YouTube channel.
Broadly speaking, we can put fats into one of two categories, what we call the saturated fats and the unsaturated fats. So when we're talking about the saturated fats, they're the kind of fats which are found in animal foods. So if your dairy and your meat and your eggs. The balance of research, including multiple high-level meta-analyses, which is a distillation of all the evidence together, would seem to indicate that saturated fats have no deleterious effects on your health at all. And in actual fact, there was a very large study of over 100,000 people on 5 different continents looking at saturated fat intake and people's chance of dying, what we call the all-cause mortality. And what it seemed to indicate was that as your saturated fat intake went up, your lifespan increased. And there was no threshold beyond which saturated fat intake was shown to be harmful in any way, which then brings us on to the other classes of fats, which are called the unsaturated fats. We can put these unsaturated fats into one of two classes again, and that's the monounsaturated fats, which simply means there's just one spare bond, or the polyunsaturated fats, which means there's more than one spare bond. Now, monounsaturated fat, the fancy name for it is called oleic acid or an omega-9, but it's more commonly known as olive oil. So olive oil is very rich in monounsaturated fat. Balance of research would suggest that olive oil doesn't have any adverse impacts on the health at all, and I think most doctors would agree that consumption of olive oil is absolutely fine. We've got two main classes of polyunsaturated fats, what we call the omega-6 fats and the omega-3s. Now, the omega-6 fats are found in vegetable and seed oils, and they actually have been shown to be pro-inflammatory. High intake of these omega-6 fats actually has been shown to be deleterious to the health, and there's a lot of research that will point to this. Now, the omega-3 fats, on the other hand, come from fish oil, and they get metabolized very similarly to the omega-6 fats, but they're nowhere near as inflammatory. In actual fact, we could probably argue that they're anti-inflammatory. And the problem is that in the modern diet, we have an imbalance between these omega-6s, which are pro-inflammatory, and the omega-3s, which are anti-inflammatory. So what actually happens, our body produces these chemicals, they're called eicosanoids, and they communicate around our body to, stimulate inflammation or stimulate the immune system or stimulate a fever or various different things like that. When we make these chemicals, these eicosanoids, we'll randomly use an omega-6 or an omega-3, and these fats are in every cell membrane. And if we have a lot more omega-6s in our cell membranes than our omega-3s, then we're going to be in an inflammatory state. So it's not enough to simply increase the amount of omega-3s in our diets by supplementing with fish oil. We also have to have a concurrent reduction in the amount of omega-6s. We have to reduce the vegetable and seed oils in our diet. And one of the big problems when we actually have a look at the research on, we argue, is fish oil beneficial to our health or not? A lot of the studies will give people omega-3 fish oil, but at the same time, they'll increase the omega-6 in the diets. They'll say, well, you need to cut out the saturated fats, which we know are not harmful, and increase your vegetable oils. So what we're doing is we're not changing the ratio at all. And it's this ratio that we need to change to improve. And that's why a lot of your viewers are probably going to be a bit confused, because they see all these studies saying, oh, fish oil didn't seem to work. But it's what else is going on at the same time in those studies. It's one thing to increase the omega-3, the anti-inflammatory fat, but if you increase the inflammatory fat at the same time, well, you negate that effect. But in my patients, what we do a blood test where we measure the percentage of the cell membrane that is actually the omega-3 fat. And what we find, we can usually get more than a doubling of that percentage by reducing the inflammatory vegetable oils and supplementing with a reasonable dose of fish oil.
Summary: saturated fats found in animal foods, such as dairy, meat, eggs. Studies have found no deleterious effects on the body. As saturated fat intake goes up, studies have found that our lifespan increases. Unsaturated fats. Monounsaturated means that they have one spare bond. An example would be oleic acid or omega-9, commonly called olive oil, and polyunsaturated fats. They have more than one spare bond. Omega-6 fats are found in vegetable and seed oils, and they are pro-inflammatory. A high intake of these omega-6 fats is deleterious to our health. Omega-3 fats are from fish oil. They get metabolized similarly to omega-6 fat, but not nearly as inflammatory. However, our modern diet often brings about an imbalance between omega-6, which are pro-inflammatory, and omega-3s, which are anti-inflammatory. Eicosanoids stimulate inflammation or immune system or fever. They will randomly use an omega-6 or an omega-3 to do their work. If we have a lot more omega-6 than omega-3, that will put us into an inflammatory state. It's not enough to simply increase omega-3 with fish oil, for example, but we must also reduce omega-6 by reducing vegetable and seed oils in our diet. Many studies of omega-6 and omega-3 don't change the ratio. So they say, oh, fish oil did not work. However, they must reduce omega-6 while at the same time increasing omega-3 to get the beneficial effect. Dr. Mason has found in his own clinical practice that he is able to more than double the percentage of omega-3 by reducing omega-6 while increasing omega-3 using fish oil. A note on fish oil. In a more recent interview, Human Performance Outliers YouTube channel, Dr. Mason says that fish oil supplements are not as effective as fish oil from wild fish. The problem? Any liquid oil, including fish oil supplements, oxidizes almost immediately after processing, thus becomes inflammatory. For more on this and to see that actual interview, see the description and the link to the HPO video.